If we boil it down to one common denominator that every singer shares, it must be fear, right? Awareness is key. Because today is Thursday, but what if I make it Thursday? Mile 3 to 8, you have to have the pass. And I thought, like, what? After mile 3, I've forgotten how to walk?
Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer. Today, as promised, I have my very best friend in the entire world, which I can honestly say that friend doesn't really cover the umbrella of exactly what our relationship is, because we're very, very close to one another. And that's actually highly unusual in the field that we're in, because so many people think about competition and everything. And when you have like a comrade in arms in this particular field of singing and performing, you've got a really good friend on your side. So that he is a Tony Award winner. And as I have said before, his bio is completely prolific. So I will not even go into that. I'll let you use Google to figure all of that awesome stuff out. He's a Tony Award winner and won the Tony for La Boheme, where he played Marcello. The funny thing about that is when I saw the poster in New York City, I was worried about bothering him. And I just stood outside and took a picture with me and my best friend on the sidewalk and never told him I was there. But this is Eugene Brancoveanu, and we are going to be covering today the subject of head games, and which is this is the last one for the month of April, I think, on head games, and we're going to talk about the negativity that happens to people in general, but mainly for performers, and how you can work your way through that. So, Eugene, I'm going to start with asking you a few questions. First, how did you even get started
All
performing in the
right.
first
Well,
place?
first of all, thank you for having me on. This is fun. This is, believe it or not, only my second ever podcast that I've done. First one I've done was for Moby Dick 3 years ago with
Wow.
Opera San Jose. But so how did I start? Well, I would have to give all credit to my mother, who never shushed me. So I was always a rather outspoken, very virulent child. So I always wanted everything to be big. And by the way, this is Luna, my cat. She's going through the picture. Come here, sweetie. Have a seat. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've banned the dogs from
And
upstairs for the time
and
being.
so soon I found myself in Tunisia, and my mother had a travel agency. Oh, sorry, I have to back up a little bit. Before we went to Tunisia, over one Christmas, there was a TV broadcast of the highlights of Phantom of the Opera on TV. And I just happened to walk into the living room. It was on TV, and I was stunned. I couldn't quite comprehend what I was seeing, and all of a sudden the music just goes bum 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 bum. And I watched, the German guy who sang Phantom was Peter Hoffmann, the Wagnerian tenor, and Anna Maria Kaufmann, the Canadian coloratura soprano, singing "In Sleep He Sang to Me in Dreams." And this fantastic duet, and with her going to those extreme high notes, and I thought, whoa, what was this? Like a lightning bolt just struck me. So that night, my mother then, she went down to her car, because in the car she had the audio tape, the cassette tape that you and I still remember very well, of the Phantom, of the whole thing, the Phantom of the Opera. And that night I didn't sleep. I must have listened to all of Phantom of the Opera 4 or 5 times in a row, and part, part of my life changed
Wow.
overnight. But that always seemed like a world away. And then a few months went by, and we went to Tunisia for a week-long vacation at this very, very nice resort. And part of the staff's duties was to entertain the tourists and to entertain the vacationers. And they would put on shows. And at first, I had mental wisdom of a 14-year-old young boy who I was all ready to make fun of their efforts. And I found myself watching them put on, among other things, Phantom of the Opera, Grease, the whole show, Les Miserables, and the way they did it, because they obviously didn't have an orchestra or anything, it was all lip synced, but it was done so well that you could have sworn they're singing. And this spirit of shoestring
Wow.
production, and just doing it for the love of it, with such integrity and such love for detail and camaraderie, I realized I needed to be part of it. And then a few nights later, there was, because this is northern Sahara in Tunisia, there was this swarm of mosquitoes just entering every room, and I couldn't sleep. They were stinging me, and I needed to get out of my bedroom, out of the hotel room. And I found myself just middle of the night wandering down those long hallways. Everything was dark, and I just naturally went to the theater. And I opened the door to the theater. It was like a roofed amphitheater, expecting there to be just as many mosquitoes, and there were no
Uh-huh.
mosquitoes. So I went in, I laid in the first row of where the audience was that night, and it was cushioned, and I just laid there and I fell asleep right then and there on this next to the stage. And henceforth, for the last 3 nights that we were there, I slept every night at the theater. I didn't go to my hotel room anymore. It was like I was cradled there. So I was completely convinced that in some form or
Wow.
fashion, like you sometimes like to say, I had to be part of this. I didn't know how. What
Mhm.
did I know? And then we went back to Germany, and I was heartbroken about having to leave Tunisia and all these people that have now become so close to my heart. Being a teenager probably emphasized that very much. And so I came back, and I found out just by coincidence that the studio that the class that the school that I went to, the international school in Heidelberg, Germany, had a drama department, and they were holding auditions for Hercules. So I found myself with the script in my hand, 24-hour notice, and I just did it instinctually, not knowing jack crap about singing or about acting. So the theater, and all of a sudden I had my in, and now I was hooked. And then I heard these fantastic words from the director and saying to me, "Yeah, I think this will work. We'll put a lion fur over you and see you in 2 months when we start rehearsals." So I went home, full script in hand, leading role, just like that. And I told my mother, and she became teary eyed. And there was a shift overnight in how she saw me, because she knew that I had loved the experience in Tunisia, but she didn't know that I was going to follow it up like that. It's like, hey, look at that! 2 months later, I'm now the lead in a play. Now, that wasn't enough for me. I also then joined the school choir, and the chorus master from my school, she then introduced me, or she told me about an audition process that was happening for a friend of hers. Her name is Carola Kribari, who was an American composer living in Germany, Heidelberg, and she was the head, the conductor, and also the composer for the American Music Theater in Heidelberg, Germany. And that year, this was 1992, they were putting on um, the show, the modern opera Columbus. So they needed vast amounts of young men playing sailors, and I found myself, being going to the audition, going to the rehearsals, and they didn't audition anybody. They just said, "Come on in. If you can breathe, if you can breathe and keep standing on your 2 feet, you're in." And at this point, I had never been to a chorus rehearsal, nor did I know. The only music training that I had was by osmosis, listening to my father practice the piano at home, or going to mass on Sundays, for the Catholic Church. I remember the organ sound, and I would play this little game with myself where the final note out of each song, I would always hum along, and I would try to time it just. I would try to time it perfectly with the end of the song and me stopping to hum, not wanting to, cause a fuzz in the church. Just would go, and then of course there would be a reverb of the
Right.
organ ringing in the church, right? So I started to, without really knowing it, I started to understand how to manipulate resonance, and it was like a shoe into that world. Anyway, jumping forward a few months, here I was all of a sudden now uh, performing in the school choir, rehearsing the lead in Hercules, and being part of a professional theater group, initially as
Uh-huh.
in the chorus with a few solo lines here and there, and just learning from all these wonderful
Mhm.
people. One of the most influential people on my work aesthetic is a Peruvian choreographer who, to this day, she runs a theater in Heidelberg, Germany. It's a dance theater. Her name is Jai Gonzalez, and she's this tiny, tiny lady, but with the willpower of, I don't know, Thanos. I don't know how else to explain. And she sort of took me under her wing, and yeah, 1992 is when it all started. So exactly 30 years ago. I have not looked back. I've never stopped performing. I've always kept up the intensity of anything. I've just increased it. So 30 years and counting.
So, when and where did you study after that? You went
Well, I
to
have to preface
you
before
went to
before I went to
you went
Romania
back
in
to
'99. So
Romania?
there was this 7 year long period where I worked essentially pro bono because the theater was a nonprofit organization. And the first year and a half, I didn't have any vocal training. I just did everything from instinct. And then my mother found out that in the city
Mhm.
where we used to have our travel agency, there was a singing teacher. She was a professor of voice and piano, and she had her own private studio. And she took me under her wing. Her name was Elizabeth Bayer. Unfortunately, I pretty much learned everything I didn't want to do vocally from her. But in terms of the basics of piano,
Mhm.
of learning how to
Mhm.
play the piano, I learned from her. And then before long, after I had done The Sound of Music in 1995, so I was now a 3 year veteran of the stage. I was then hired to sing. This was my first professional engagement. I was hired to sing Matt in The Fantastics by Mary Ellen Gross, who ran the American Musical Theater in one of the army bases in Heidelberg. And with her, I then got my first experience of what it was to be a
Okay.
young leading man on tour and going to several different cities and military bases and just learning to live on the road.
Oh, wow.
And then, as
Mhm.
part of that production, Roberta Cunningham was then hired as the female lead. And she took me under her wing, and this is putting it in an extreme nutshell because overnight she just
Oh, wow.
introduced me to a world of understanding how the body works and a certain amount of energies that need to be released when you're singing, the whole idea of
Mhm.
support that I had never heard about. And I immediately felt, I need to go this direction. I don't need to go this direction. I felt extremely guilty at first about betraying my then teacher, Elizabeth Bayer, but I felt that there was no future there. And then Roberta introduced me to Neil, and
Right.
within 90
Right.
minutes, I was surrounded by professional opera singers
Yes.
who were all, 10 years older than me. And so again, I had to grow up very quickly overnight. So I was still 18 years old. This was in 1996, and Roberta, who was teaching in Ames, which is the American Institute of Musical Studies in Graz, she invited me to come to be there for 4 weeks out of a 9 week program because I was still in high school. I couldn't join them earlier, so I only joined for the final 4 weeks, and again, that was yet
Yes.
another step up for me to see how do I measure up against now these young professionals. And I had to grow up overnight. The repertoire that I knew back then when I was 18, I knew what, three or four arias and a whole lot of old Italian arias and a vast ocean of musical theater repertoire. So in those 4 weeks, I must have learned four different roles entirely, up to 20 arias, whether they were the right ones or not. I didn't care. I just like, yeah. I just sponged it up as much
Right,
as I
right.
could because I felt I needed to catch up. The same with music theory. I started to practice the piano again because I realized I need all these skills, and all I can do here among these fantastic people who are just offering these classes, I need to go to every class and immerse myself completely. And at the end of those 4 weeks, I felt that I had made this quantum leap in development and that I literally graduated from Ames and gotten the absolute maximum out of it. Oh, yeah. Um, so I came home after Graz, now more than ever firmly having my eyes set on becoming a classical singer, an opera singer. I love the musical theater world, but I realized that my voice was really best suited for classical and opera. And then this competition came my way called Young People Creating Music. In German, it's called Jugend musiziert, or Youth Creates Art, or Youth Creates Music. And there was the category
Right.
of song, and you had 3 rounds: first regional rounds, then state rounds, and then and then national rounds, just like Nats, right?
Right.
And
Right. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
made it
Mhm.
through, and with the help of Roberta and Neil, I made it through all 3 rounds. Again, making a long story very short. I
Right.
ended up in the finals, in the national finals in Leipzig, and I got a perfect score, 25 points out of 25, which
Wow.
no, um, patting patting myself patting myself on the back. My good looks are only matched by my humility, right? and I was so proud of it because I realized I had now made my way, through as an 18-year-old. I had discovered that I was able to keep up with professional classical singers. First competition I did, bang, 25 points out of 25, and now I was on a roll because through that win in 1997, I was then invited to go on a European tour with the National Youth Orchestra. So yet again, a new horizon for myself to claim. So here I was, 18 and a half,
Right.
19 years old in 1997, singing in Spain, all across Germany, going back to Tunisia to an arena called El Jem, so singing in the arena with a full orchestra. And again, I had to
Wow.
learn new repertoire that was good for an orchestra to play. And again, the maturization process that was happening, how to keep yourself at the highest possible level when you've only had 3 hours of sleep, training, singing at your highest level while still growing up, being 19, 20 years old. Just an avalanche of challenges that I had to conquer and had to succeed with. But what an amazing, amazing ride! And then once I finished high school, and this is only when I finished high school, I decided, okay,
Right.
now it's time to actually, go out and get a degree somehow, somewhere. And
Yes,
I
yes.
was, of course, still working with Neil and Roberta, and my path now took me back to Romania because I had done another competition in '99, again that I won, and then I was invited to come and be a student at the Academy of Music in Romania, in Cluj, and they had a national theater there, and the arrangement was anybody who wanted to could audition for the young singers ensemble at the National Theater. And as part of you, if you were a freshman at the university, you had to audition every semester. Everybody had to have that experience of auditioning on a stage. So I auditioned, and they just picked me up and said, "Yep, we want you to sing Escamillo, Barbara of Seville, Silvio, Uberto, Don Giovanni." So in one season, trained uh, on stage in Romania, again with shoestring budgets, absolutely no real production value other than is your enthusiasm there? Where should I pick up? Mhm. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So it was the best classroom because here I was a student at the academy, but I was also
On
now
stage.
being
That's
trained
right.
in real life on stage with my fellow singers who, again, were much older than me. I was still, how old was I? 99. I was 21, 22 years old. And once I got my first diploma at the end of my third semester, because there you work, it's always after 1.5 years you can get a diploma. I realized that because the academy and the theater were so decrepit, I had learned everything I needed to learn in those 18 months there. That now I needed to go yet to find yet another horizon. So I wanted to know, I wanted to go to the best possible university in Europe, and that, of course, was the home of Mozart, Salzburg. So yet again, I went, hopped on a train, rode to Salzburg, and a friend from the National Theater in Romania told me about a Romanian
Yep.
teacher in Salzburg at the
Right.
university by the name of Boris Bakov, who's that was his pseudonym, his artistic pseudonym. His real name was Ilie Baciu, but he changed it to Boris Bakov. I don't know why, but he was Boris Bakov. So he heard me at the audition, and he took me into his studio. He said to me, "Okay, now make sure you pass the theory exam, which was not that difficult. I just had to review basic
Okay.
theory, and in I was." And again, after my audition, the opera studio immediately picked me up, which was unheard of because usually you get to join the opera studio in semester 5 or 6. I was in semester 3 because they only would accredit 2 of my semesters from Romania. So I joined in semester 3, and I really never saw the inside of any of the theory classrooms, except for the tests, because I was in rehearsals all day. They just,
Right.
quote unquote, used me for their shows all the time.
From
And
the
they had a
yeah,
close
yeah, yeah.
collaboration with the composition department in Salzburg. So all these modern composers were writing opera scenes and song cycles and little short chamber operas that then the
Wow.
opera studio was putting on. So not only was I learning the standard repertoire, but also very much, modern opera. And it was so important because nowadays opera doesn't exist just with the standard repertoire, but also with the modern opera. Doing, I'm doing 2 productions. Soon I will be doing Prokofiev's Maddalena, where I'm singing Steno, and then The Father in Philip Glass's Beauty and the Beast, back to back. They actually overlap, but with some kind of miraculous
Right.
divine intervention, it works
Right.
out. Anyway, this is me in a nutshell. That's right. No, actually, this is right where we had left. This is
Right. Right.
Salzburg.
Where
Salzburg. I was done in Salzburg in 2002. Then went and auditioned in London for Baz Luhrmann,
London.
and then
Mhm.
my life changed again.
Right, and then he was in New York City where I stood on a sidewalk and said nothing. So so and there it is. He's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" I just I was worried you were in rehearsals and doing things, so I didn't. I always did stuff like that, and I've sort of gotten
And
over it from now, but
if I'm in rehearsal and I have to look at you, no, I can't go on. I saw Crystal. Oh,
so
am I supposed
so,
to take power?
Eugene, when you are doing all of these things, I mean, so there's no way as a human being that you can go through all of that and to do the things that you can do that you don't have to have and have some sort of fight with negativity, because
Of
I
course.
know that critics write things. Says I know this because I'm always the one that goes and finds your reviews. So, So I know the things that, and honestly, people, just so you know, I have never found a bad review of Eugene, but I really haven't. In all these years, I have dug and dug, and I've actually never found a bad review on Eugene. So that's a good thing. But at any rate, it's still there's a negative thing that goes on in our minds that we've been addressing for the last 2 or 3 weeks, that we always have to face when we do anything in life. It doesn't matter what we do, we have to face the
Hmm.
demon that is in there, that is trying to conquer and suppress what we believe about ourselves and what we're capable of doing, because that just goes against us. So when you do these things, which obviously, being on the stage in New York, there's a tremendous amount of pressure and a tremendous amount of criticism that comes in from producers and directors, and it comes from all different directions. So
Hmm.
what are some really great things that you have found that you use?
If we boil it down to one common denominator that every singer shares, it must be fear, right? And you can be afraid of
Mm-hmm.
either fear of failure or worse, fear of success. Because I find fear of success
Mm-hmm.
causes many singers to self sabotage way ahead of the game, right? Um,
Yes.
Awareness is key. If you're aware of what it is that's happening to you, and I'm generalizing hugely right now, then you have opened an avenue to understanding how to undo the destructive processes. It's like sitting at a beach and watching a tsunami wave come at you. If you decide to just dig yourself into the sand, you will die. If you seek to
Mm-hmm.
find higher singers, none of us singers really have a choice in changing the parameters,
Yes.
right? I can't decide for myself, well, I have to, like 3 nights ago, I had to sing Phantom, and the audience was right there. I cannot tell all of them now to get the hell out of the theater, because I would just feel better if you weren't there, you know, because it's just too scary. So I can only deal with what's
Yeah.
going on inside of myself. And most of the time, the very thing that we seek to hide the most from an audience or a director or someone we audition with, that is actually our strongest asset. So
Exactly.
that's that that's the source of the most spontaneous, exciting music making, artistry. Painters experience it the same way. That's why Jackson Pollock was such a brilliant painter, because he would just let the drip, drip, drip decide what the painting would be, and his movements were, creating the piece of art. So, uh, a various, you know, a whole plethora of exercises that I learned from Neil and from Roberta, and they always had to do with manifesting what was actually happening in the moment, saying out loud the things that frighten me, writing on a piece of paper all the things that I'm afraid of. But I guess I would. Well, I don't guess. I must say, devil affirmations was the most useful tool for me, because I would hear myself say, okay, Eugene, you suck, you can't do it, you're no good, this is not going to work, your instrument's broken, blah, blah, blah. Just the most horrendous things that at first I was very hesitant to say out loud. But once I got used to actually saying this out loud and I manifested, then I realized I was able to take a step back and say, all right, these are lies. These are lies. This is not true. I don't have to buy into that. These lies, though, are part of who I am. But instead of drowning in a bubble and being attacked from all sides, that bubble becomes smaller and it's still attached to you, but it's now part of
That's right.
many different bubbles that you can choose. You know, and this is hugely subjective psychobabble uh, stuff that I'm saying.
Yes.
Everybody has to discover that for themselves. But the path to embracing oneself with all the good, the bad, and the ugly is an absolute must. Every performer must discover that path for themselves, and whatever works for you. Um, For me, I find exercise, cardiovascular exercise, whether it's running, swimming, or being on the bike, or all three, if you love triathlons, seems to be the perfect ingredient to constantly be, flooding the body with as many endorphins as possible, having generally a good lifestyle, and then trying to surround yourself with kind, loving people such as yourself. But there's so much more to it, so let's keep exploring.
Well, I find just in the studio itself, helping other singers to overcome that negative thing, because so many of them, because I have so many young singers, and that, is I'm training them up to become champions, and I find that so many of them actually believe that that negative voice is them. I mean, they're they're joined with the thought
Mm-hmm.
that those thoughts are actually being manifested by that person. So I'm just going to pull out a name. If it's Julie, um, Julie believes that Julie is saying those things to Julie, and to get Julie to understand that, no, that there is another Julie, and that Julie is saying it, and that Julie lies. That's a very
Yeah.
hard thing to break into. It's like, breaking that, like breaking a rock, in a lot of ways, to get somebody to accept the fact that they're not actually saying that to themselves.
Yeah, it's like what you and I said before we started the recording.
Yes.
Our inner Nazi, and he will lie so convincingly, and he will give he the our inner Nazi, our inner demon, will give us so many really good rational reasons that we should heed and listen to, lest we will be destroyed or something like that. It's all in the name of virtue, and we ourselves could never, no director or agent or producer could ever treat us as poorly and as dismissively as we
Yes.
tend to treat ourselves. But we do it under the mantelpiece of, well, I just want to keep myself honest, and I'm going to work harder. Of course, hard work is involved, but what is the well? Is the well that you're drawing your pail up from poisoned, or is it a well that nurtures you, that actually nurtures you? And if your family background is steeped in an extreme sense of obedience and rigidity and resolute strictness, then you have a problem, because then you will most likely treat yourself in equal measure. But this childlike sense of spontaneous love to play and to explore and to create, if that's not present, then
I
that's like
just look at
riding
it
your
this
bike
way.
with
There
no
has
air
to
in the
be
tires.
a way that you decide that vulnerability is the way you have to live, and the way you actually produce when you're on the stage or in an audition setting or whatever, that it's okay to be vulnerable.
And that's why we have agents who usually do that work for us. But if you don't have an agent and you have to be your own, you have to tout your own horn, that can be incredibly difficult. And you have to make a concerted effort to go from, okay, I just got off the phone with X, Y, or Z, and we're discussing zeros on my contract. Now I need to prepare, say, the score for Beauty and the Beast, and I need to be creative about it. It cannot be just by the numbers. And that's a there you're really dancing on two weddings at the same time,
What do you
because
say
you
to
have
a
there is no
student
other choice.
or
What else are
somebody
you
that
going to do?
wants to do this career, and they really struggle in the area of practice because of the negativity?
That would depend on what
Mhm.
form the negativity takes, and I've seen all sorts. I've had one time a student of mine we were working on compression into the passaggio during a vocalise, and she came over to me, grabbed my hand, and went and
Really
bit me.
bit you? Like really bit you?
Yes, and that was the look on my face. Yeah, yeah. Well, in jest, but at the same time, it never entered my mind that I should go over to Roberta or Neil and go, "Hey, I didn't manage to go into my passaggio correctly, so I need your hand for a second." So
Can you imagine?
all forms.
That's so funny.
So that was an extreme form of that was an extreme form
Okay,
of beating
did
themselves
the
up and
person
then
ever
others, I
explain
guess. Um,
why biting
but
you was the thing to do?
they didn't need to. They didn't need to. I understood. They were frustrated. They were frustrated, and then my cat, my cat does that sometimes when we play. She will lay on her
Yes.
back, and then I will rub her tummy, and she will grab my hand and she'll go. And I'm thinking, oh, she's trying to figure out the passaggio.
That's a yeah, that's just so strange. That I mean,
What a
that's a
studious cat.
strange
So,
way
but to get
of dealing with your
and now getting back to
frustration. I know I hear a
yeah,
lot from students
and
that they just don't
so
like the way they hear their voice, and so they'd rather do something else than to actually try to practice. And they're just like, I just don't like hearing myself.
yeah, uh-huh. Uh, Again, I'm taken back to what Neil told me when I was 18 years old, when he said,
Exactly.
"Don't hear yourself singing, feel yourself singing." Because
Right.
depending on what kind of environment you have, whether you have a good acoustical room, a very resonant room, or a room that is almost dead, and everybody is different, right? Some singers like if the room is almost acoustically neutral, like there's no reverberation whatsoever, um, because then they hear less of themselves, and it feeds into a sense of comfort. Oh, thank God, I don't have to deal with myself right now. Or someone like me, I love it if the room is very resonant, and then I have to be even more cautious or deliberate in my approach to make sure that I'm not now giving into the forbidden fruit and go, oh, this sounds so good, let me indulge it. But always
Right.
pursue what my voice needs the most, which is efficiency of breath and clarity of speech. As singers, we are never not ourselves. And our best singing is always one breath away, and our worst singing is also one breath away. So every time I take a breath, I have to make sure that I choose what I truly want. And I can be selfish about it, and I can be full of myself about it, and not shy away from the challenge. One time I remember this, just yesterday I was talking to another student of mine about this. Um, Neil was again helping me um, diffuse that time bomb that was my mind. And I just, with a
Right.
huge sense of frustration, said to him, Neil, can't I just sing? Can't Why does it always have to be this soul searching, mind numbing Sisyphus work, rolling up the hill and then can't I just sing, open my mouth and sing? I see so many other people just singing. And he said to me, yeah, yeah, you're right, Eugene. Think of it like this. Tonight, when you go home, and my daughter Eliana was only 1 year old back then, and if Eliana has a poopy diaper, just tell her, oh, just stay in it. I don't want to have to change the diaper today. Just stay in the poopy diaper, you know. And understand it. And I understood in that moment, singers have poopy mental diapers. We have to get
Right.
rid of the poopy mental diaper. And whatever process that is, you got to do it. And some days you just do it quickly and you go, "Phew,
Exactly.
done." And other days you go, oh no, it's poop. It's
That's right.
poop. I'm full of poop. it doesn't change the reality. It's like doing Lawrence of Arabia, but let's do it without the sand. It's not gonna happen. And whatever poop is not being addressed is only going to increase day by day. And the worst is when you begin considering whatever abuse you dish out to yourself as the norm on a daily basis. I'm thinking of one particular colleague of mine who wasn't able to ever absorb the presence or the present moment as a good thing. There was always tainted with a negative flavor, and I was this close to in talking to her about it once, and I didn't, and I wish I had in retrospective. But I'm guessing that she considers that approach to truly what it means to be professional, and it's so sad. It's as if, anybody who starts out in this career choice, in this profession, you start out with a full heart and a smile and enthusiasm, and after about 5 years you're going to start to see, oh, I now see the man behind the curtain, and it's gross and I don't like it, but now I'm committed and I have to stick it out, like a bad marriage. And I'm always thinking, no, it is what you make it. And if you cannot uh, keep a sense of wonderment and magic about this phenomenal art form that affords you so many avenues of exploration, then either you don't do it and make room for people who want to do it, or you do it and you pretend as if you're enjoying it so that you don't poison the area around you and somehow bring everybody else down with you. And in my work with some of my younger teenagers that I work with, we're putting together various medleys. Right now, we're working with cabaret, and I simply will not let anybody get away with sitting in rehearsal like this. Like, I always tell them, okay, when you come in, I want to see the reason why you're here. Show me that you're excited. And I'd rather those kids have a moment of, what's Eugene's problem? Why won't he let me just sit like this? Because maybe I have planted the seed in that mind that, right, I don't have to just go like this. Because today is Thursday, but what if I make it Thursday? As simple as that. Straighten out. And uh, and and those little shifts anybody can do. Nobody can tell me. And I fully understand how some younger kids may at first not be willing to engage as much with themselves as I would want them. But ultimately, that unmovable rock, that wall of Jericho, needs to be shattered and rocked into motion. And if that's the beginning, so be it.
Okay, Eugene, as we tie this podcast up, we're going to play a game of Inside the Actor's Studio. So here we go with questions. All right. Our first question: what is your favorite word?
My favorite word is voluptuous. And I think that stems from my love for sculpture, and in particular Bernini. I was given the assignment in 1999, I believe it was, to do, no, sorry, 97. I was in Rome. It was on a student exchange between the International School of the Arts in Rome and our school. And I was told I needed to give like a little project delivery in front of the classroom on a sculptor in Italian, mind you. And I thought, okay, I'll just go with Bernini. It's just luck of the draw. And little did I know that it led me down this fantastic artistic rabbit hole and learning about this guy. And he was the first a sculptor who managed to create the following effect in marble. You see how as I'm grabbing into my arm, the tissue gives way to the pressure of the fingers and to the extremities. So Bernini was the first to be able to do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and so
Uh-huh.
he created scenes out of
Yes.
mythology and
Mhm.
historical events, all very melodramatic, like whether it's Apollo trying to seduce Daphne, or the abduction of the Sabine women, all incredibly visceral, very, very voluptuous. And since then, that word stuck with me.
Okay, so instead of impressionist, would that make him a depressionist?
Yes.
Yes.
He was very depressed.
Yes. Okay. Next question. Question number 2. What is your least favorite word?
No. Together, together with whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like no and
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay, number 3. What turns you on? Yeah.
Curiosity.
Okay. What turns you off? It's number 4.
Ignorant entitlement.
Same here. Same here. Number 5. What sound or noise do you love?
Silence. Absolute silence. Like this kind of silence I experienced when I was hiking around Lake Tahoe. I was going up, doing the Merlet Lake hike, and it was so quiet. And I got to the top of that lake, of that alpine lake, and it was perfectly quiet. It was a bit windy, but not loud enough that you wouldn't really hear it, and no sound except a bald eagle
Oh, wow.
just soaring above the Merlet Lake in a figure 8 sideways, which is the sign for
Yeah.
eternity.
Oh, yeah,
And he
yeah,
was
the
just doing
infinity
his
sign. Mhm.
amazing, and was perfectly quiet. And I couldn't get enough of it. I literally entered a state of mental euphoria. I loved it. It was so beautiful. It lasted. I was there for half an hour before I had to turn back, and because it's a long hike, it's about 5.5 hour hike, and I had to get back.
Wow.
I experienced something similar when I was hiking the Nepali coastline on Kauai in
Uh,
2005. I was by myself, which is so idiotic. And I can confess now I did not have the pass to actually hike the whole way, and I did. I just did it. Had the ranger found me, they would have arrested me. It's like, what the hell? And I just went for it.
Okay.
Because it didn't make any sense to me. The first 2 miles you can hike without a pass, and then the mile 3 to 8 you have to have a pass. And I thought, it's like, what? After mile 3, I've forgotten how to walk. What are you doing? So silence is my favorite
Okay, what
noise.
sound or noise do you hate?
3 second long TikTok videos that seek to grab your attention when it comes from my kids' phones.
No, it's okay, anything. No,
No,
no.
no.
Okay, number 7. This is okay. What is your favorite curse word?
I would have to say it is the one that Harrison Ford shares with me, and it begins with mother and has the procreation word right after that. And I choose
Rhymes with
not to
pooper.
utter it here. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. Number 8, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Easy. That would have been race car driver, Formula One
Oh, yeah.
driver.
I knew that one was coming. Uh, okay, number 9, what profession would you not like to do?
I think I would not want to be a tax collector.
If heaven exists, which I believe it does exist, so I really don't like the word if on that. Since heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oy. Um, oh my goodness, that's if we were to narrow it down to the possibility of verbal interaction, and that would happen in English,
Mhm.
what would I want him to say? A combination of "told you so" and um, yeah, maybe just that. "Told you so." But a welcoming "told you so." 'Cause I've had my own bouts with atheism when I was a teenager, um, where I just,
Told you
you know,
so.
thought I knew had all the answers,
Yeah.
um, and then really with the advent of singing and music appearing in my life, you know, in more ways than I can count, the Almighty has revealed Himself to me in a way that I experienced in the most childlike way. I never had the experience where I went, "Oh right, I'm part of the club now." No, it was me being reduced to just a blubbering, you know, puddle of myself in the face of what I can only describe as grace beyond belief and miracles happening in the palm of my hand sometimes, where whether it's me holding Eliana or Alexander in my hand, and I always like to describe this moment when Eliana was born and when Alexander was born. I felt like the Almighty grabbed me by the collar of the neck and just went like this, flung me up into the air, so that for a second I would see the curvature of the planet and go, "Oh, I get it." And when I landed, I was a parent. And you get a bit of the big picture, and that makes you, and that made me feel incredibly small and inadequate. And the only real help and the only guarantee of
Yes.
success is, you know, a sense of, you know,
Yes.
belonging to, you know, I want to use the word belief carefully, but a conviction, because I don't just believe, because believe is too much like that emoji. Hmm. You know, it's it's a steadfastness on the inside that, with all the crap that's going on in
Yeah.
the world these days, uh, ultimately
Yes,
everything will
yes,
be okay.
yes.
Everything will be all right, and more so than okay, more so than all right, because we have, whether it's on stage or whether, you know, and when we watch Netflix, more and more, um, society is settles for a sense of mediocrity, and I simply cannot participate on that mediocre level. Not because I'm so great, it's because I have seen too much that is beyond mediocre. I've seen too much that is spectacularly beautiful and explosively beautiful, where I just go, it's mind blowing, you know, and
No.
it can be sometimes in the smallest thing and sometimes in the most overt manifestation. And to maintain that childlike sense of wonderment whether I use it in as a teacher or as a director or whether I'm singing, that needs to be my one and only crusade, because that is, I feel, the talent that I was given, my sense of childlike enthusiasm, which can be interpreted as naive. And if that's the price, so be it. I don't care. Yeah, I'll gladly be labeled naive as long as I don't have to dig a trench with all the other cynics.
I'm with you. I can't go there. I always think there's got to be something that's better and more, and
Mm-hmm.
and the sense and connection with God is a for me is you know that it's a very big part of my DNA,
Mm-hmm.
who I am. And I think that it's important to maintain that connection because that lets me know that there is a level that is better than I could even imagine for myself.
And it's not our job to try to raise to that level, because
No,
we can't.
no.
There's no way. It's the same way we as parents don't want our kids to become us,
Hmm.
right?
That's right.
They've done the job. They have done they've done the one and only job that we needed them to do. Just be our kids.
That's
Then
right.
everything is gonna fall into place.
That's right. All right, that's the end of our game tonight. Our game of Inside the Actor Studio. So you heard it here, and I want to thank you for being here again. Thank you very much. Thank you for always showing up, and thank you for being my first podcast victim. Yeah, I know. My first podcast guest. I appreciate it so very much that you're always walking beside me. And that
Hmm.
makes a huge difference in my life. I just heard this week, we don't need somebody pushing us and we don't need somebody pulling us, but walking side by side is exactly what we always need. And
Hmm.
that's what I know that you and I have. And I think that that connection that way is the best connection you can possibly have. So I appreciate it. Okay, everybody, remember this podcast drops on Monday. Every single Monday, you get a new podcast. This is episode 10 with Eugene Brancoveanu. And as always, I'm Crystal McDaniel, and this is The Naked Singer.